everybody survived the storm, the snowstorm. And as far as I know, we did not crash any police cars. So that's a good thing. I'm sure Commander Angelo is very excited about that. And that's really all I have as far as the intro goes. Commander Angelo, as y'all well know, this is he's the big boss over the West Side, and this is his meeting. So, Commander, it's all you.
Great. Thank you, Tim. And it's our meeting. It's not my meeting. So first of all, welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us. And heard somebody in the background saying this was your first meeting. So welcome. Please spread the word. We hope the information and the presentation that you're going to view tonight is going to have some utility for you and you find it useful and helpful. So what I like to do, we start out with the crime stats for the month of February. When we can, Jason, can you go to the next slide, please? What we do is we compare February stats to the previous month on that bottom left table. If you go to the bottom right, we're going to compare the stats from January and February of 2021 through February of 2020 on the bottom right. So let's start on the left tab. So if you noticed, for the month of February, we had 4 murders in our area. Moving on to sexual assaults, we had 13 in the month of February, robberies 95, and aggravated assaults about 141. When we blend all of these numbers together in February and compare them to January, we have almost a 10% reduction in violent crime. So let me kind of break down the murders a little bit more for you and kind of give you a sense of what is going on. I want to allay your fears. 4 sounds like a lot, and it is a lot, but I think context is important for the murders. So again, in February, there were 4 murders, which is a 300% increase over January. 2 of these incidents were gang or drug related. 1 involved a homeless male with an extensive criminal history who was found dead while he was squatting in a vacant apartment. And then 1 incident involved a disturbance that escalated into a shooting in which the victim was an acquaintance of the suspect's girlfriend. So these are known suspects. So these are not serial murders that are current in our area. These are people who are engaged in criminal activity, in the unsavory world, whether you're dealing narcotics or you're in a gang. They have a higher propensity of being involved in violent crime, and lo and behold, we had 4 murders. If anybody has, I can go into further detail, but I just wanted to give you the overview that these are drug and gang related. The 1 homeless male that was killed, that one's still under investigation. Not a whole lot of detail on that one yet. And then the known suspect with the acquaintance. So moving on to sexual assaults. Again, we had 13 sexual assaults in the month of February. Out of the 13 sexual assaults that we had, 12 of them were committed by family members or other known suspects, such as a boyfriend or ex-boyfriend. There is no indication of a serial assault suspect at this time in our area, but I do want to highlight the 1 case that is a stranger case. This sexual assault occurred on February the 14th on Kip Way. And the complainant, the victim, was walking down the street when the suspect came up behind her and forced her into his vehicle at knife point. So not a whole lot of detail as to why he forced her in the vehicle. Not a whole lot of detail in the report when I read it today. And I'll provide a little bit more information about the victim in a second. Once inside the vehicle, the suspect sexually assaulted her. And after the suspect was done sexually assaulting her, she was able to escape from the vehicle, and she waved down a passerby, another vehicle, for help. That witness, who she flagged down, was able to take a snapshot of the suspect's license plate, and that was given to our patrol officers when they responded to the scene. I reached out to our investigator over our Special Victims Division, who is investigating this case. This is the 2nd sexual assault that this young lady has reported within the past 3 to 4 months. This one investigator is actively working on both cases. Unfortunately, this victim is not returning the investigator's call, so we don't have a whole lot of information to go on. The investigator did tell me she has developed a suspect, but until the victim can actually meet with the investigator and try to identify the suspect, there will be no arrest in this case. So I think there's some other reasons, other things occurring in this young lady's life that may provide a little bit more information about her. So 2 sexual assaults within 3 to 4 months, that's highly irregular. I'm not here to cast aspersions on the victim whatsoever. We start with a philosophy by believing, but we have to prove these cases up, and we have to ask the hard questions as well. So, but unfortunately, this particular victim is not cooperating with our officers. As we move on to robberies, you notice this is the biggest drop we had in violent crime, almost a 30% reduction, which is fantastic news. Our officers on the west side, our crime suppression officers and our patrol officers, we did make 4 robbery arrests in February. And the suspects, I'm going to highlight a case right here from this incident, are linked to multiple robberies in our area. And that's what we've noticed, that these aren't one-off robberies where these suspects are committing robberies and being one and done. These are people who are out on the loose, and they're committing robbery after robbery after robbery. So it's our robbery detectives and our investigators at Westside. It is not uncommon for us to link 4 to 5 to 6 robbery cases to the same suspects. And when we do that, we can clear 4, 5, or 6 robbery cases. But the one case I do want to highlight, in February, we had 3 felonies arrests, 3 misdemeanor arrests. We recovered a gun as well. So our Westside crime suppression team was reviewing the robbery reports, and they were in an area where some robberies were occurring, and they observed a vehicle matching the suspect description from the previous robbery. So they set up on the suspect. They followed him to the PMX station on Beechnut, watched the suspects get out and actually commit a robbery at the PMX gas station. They attempted to stop the vehicle as it left. There's a vehicle pursuit that follows. They're able to get the vehicle stopped after a short foot chase, and lo and behold, the vehicle that the suspects are driving are stolen. Surprise, surprise. So we were able to charge the driver with unauthorized use of a motor vehicle for driving a stolen vehicle during the commission of this robbery, and as well as evading on foot. The female passenger was charged with evading on foot and criminal trespass. And our West Side robbery squad is following up because they've linked at least 3 cases with these same suspects. And since it's so many cases, they're taking the lead on this. And we believe we're going to be able to tie at least 3 additional aggravated robberies to these suspects. So great work by our crime suppression team, great work by our robbery division, we're just working in concert together and just trying to reduce our violent crime. And finally, aggravated assaults. So as you see on this table, there's 141 aggravated assaults for the month of January. So that's about a 3% increase. In February, which is about a 3% increase from January. We did have 26 arrests related to aggravated assault in February. 67 of the 141 incidents, almost 50%, and this is a number that's remained steady since I've been at Westside, almost 50% of our aggravated assaults are domestic violence. So these involve known suspects. 20 of the incidents involved actual shootings or discharge of firearms. 13 were at people, and 7 discharges were at property. Of the 20 shootings, over half of them involved suspects that were known to the complainant. So as far as trends, we're not seeing many stranger on stranger cases where the incident didn't begin with some sort of disturbance or road rage incident prior to the discharge of firearms. So I just say that to say this: if you're going down the road, minding your own business, you're out there shopping, the chances of you becoming a victim of an aggravated assault are extremely low. That doesn't mean to let your guard down, not at all. You need to still keep your guard up. Follow your intuition. If something doesn't feel right, follow your intuition. But I need to put these numbers in perspective because that's important about what is occurring in our area. I do want to highlight one case of aggravated assault where we had a series of incidents that occurred on February the 5th where one single female, single meaning she was by herself. I don't know if she was married or not, but she went on a rampage. She's driving her vehicle on Club Creek in the Bissonnet area. And we had 3 separate reports where where the female driving the vehicle is ramming other vehicles. Our officers were able to respond after the 3rd incident. We were able to identify her after witnesses pointed us out where she was at. We were able to get her into custody, and we filed 3 charges of aggravated assault. So aggravated assault is not just only pointing a firearm or pointing a weapon at somebody. It could be somebody using the vehicle as a weapon. So a vehicle, if you intentionally ram another vehicle, it is aggravated assault. It is not a crash, and you can be charged with a felony. So as we move on to nonviolent crimes, the lower half of that table on the left, just overall, our Part 1 nonviolent crimes were down 13% in February over January. And when we blend our violent crime with our nonviolent crime, we're down about 12.5% in February. So this is a good trend that we're seeing, that we're noticing. You might have seen with the recent approval by City Council with Chief Finner, his number one priority is going to be violent crime. He says he wants to be laser focused. As a matter of fact, my boss, I don't know if she's on here yet, but we're having a meeting tomorrow to talk about violent crime and strategies to combat violent crime. Let me just talk about the table on the left. If you noticed our year-to-date numbers, the 2021 numbers through February, we are down about 12.5% over last year as well. So we are trending in the right direction. The one outlier there on the right side is our burglary to a buildings. This has been our Achilles heel. Our burglaries, our commercial burglaries are on the rise. We are seeing an uptick in burglaries to storage units. And typically, when we respond to a burglary to a storage unit, it's not just one unit, it could be 5 to 6 units. And that is 5 to 6 separate burglaries. So each unit that is burglarized is a separate offense, which is counted in these numbers as well. So that's what's going on for Westside for the first 2 months. Before I turn it over to Lieutenant Trometer, or Tim, I don't know, is Chief Ambridge on the line?
She is not on yet. No, sir.
Okay. So before I turn it over to Lieutenant Trometer, does anybody have any questions regarding anything I talked about? Oh, hey, Jason, can you go to the next slide, please? I'm sorry. Let's talk about. And if you notice, this is what your Westside officers have done in February. They've put 218 people. They've arrested 218 people for these separate offenses right there. So your officers have been busy in the month of February, and we're continuing that trend in the month of March. So be happy to answer any questions that I can. All right. If nobody has any questions, let me turn it over to Lieutenant Trometer, and he can update you on what is going on the DRT/community service side. Tim?
Hi again, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. Looks like we're having a very good turnout, so we want to keep that going. But just want to give a quick update regarding, I know in the past I've mentioned a lot about some of the homeless encampments and some of the challenges we are facing, but actually I thought I had some pretty good news regarding it, and that's what I wanted to kind of focus on tonight, give you an update. We have been working extensively with the Houston Police Department's homeless outreach team, and we're also able to partner with a couple of case agents with the Star of Hope to do some outreach. I think we're actually seeing some very good returns on that. So one individual in particular, so we went out with both the HOT team and our the representatives from the Star of Hope to our kind of our areas that have the more of the encampments, Highway 6, I-10 area, and then along the Beltway, Westheimer, Bel Air, and Beach Nut. We did find one individual at Westheimer and the Beltway who we were able to get into shelter, get that individual off the street. And then on this past Monday, the Star of Hope went out after we did some follow-up with them. They also were able to get an individual out of off the street into some shelter at Beach Nut in the Beltway. There was another individual who would like to go at Bel Air in the Beltway. There were some scheduling conflicts. So they're going to come back Monday, and hopefully we can get him in there as well. So the promise inside of that is before I left work today, I drove down through Beltway and Beach Nut. That was completely clear of encampments. We're, like I said, work with the individual there on Bel Air. So I think we have some encouraging news, kind of going in the right direction. I know Highway 6 and I-10, Katy Freeway area still continues to be a challenge for us. Again, we're still going to work with those individuals, but I think this is a step in the right direction. So I just wanted to give some promise and feedback updates on that type of situation. So again, if there's any questions for me, please let me know. If not, I'll turn it over to Commander Falber.
Any questions? Man, no questions. Hey, our guest speaker tonight, you might find him looking very familiar. He's our former commander out here at Westside, who's now the gang commander, and he's going to talk to us tonight about some of the gang issues in Houston and West Houston. And so I'm going to turn it over to him.
Good evening, everybody. How y'all doing?
Good.
Well, that's good to know. Tavis, you doing okay?
Good seeing you, Commander.
Good seeing you, Jeff. Hey, basically going to give you a history of gangs in Houston. Essentially, gangs in Houston started out originally as neighborhood cliques until the late 1980s and early 1990s when we had the crack, cocaine, and cocaine issues fueling the territorial struggles and the gang violence that started to raise its ugly head here in the Houston area. At that same time, you also had what was going on in Los Angeles and also in Chicago, Illinois. In Los Angeles, you had the Crips and the Bloods. The Crips flew under a blue rag, the Bloods flew under a red rag. And in Los Angeles, you had many different sets. Often those sets were identified by street names, such as 5 Deuce Hoover Crips, or the Rollin' 60 Crips, or Treetop Pyru Bloods, and 59 Bounty Hunter Bloods, which we have here in Houston. In Chicago, you had the Folk Nation and the People Nation. The Folk Nation basically was comprised of African-American gangs, such as the Gangster Disciples and the Black Disciples. And the People Nation was primarily the Latin Kings. And they too had many different sets. And the difference though between the Chicago gangs and the LA gangs is that the Chicago gangs operated very much like corporations did. So they had a highly structured corporate view in their operations and in their leadership. With the Crips and the Bloods, you didn't have that until the late 1990s when the Folk Nation and the People Nation started to influence the Crips and the Bloods. And that was also the time you started to see the Crips and the Bloods become more of a transnational gang, just like the Folk and People Nations were. And in the early 1990s, you also had a lot of the Crips and the Bloods and the Folk and People Nation gangs starting to infiltrate the Houston area. The Hispanic gangs in the Houston area in the early 1990s were very territorial, often connected to apartment complexes or neighborhoods, such as the Gulfton Ghetto. One interesting dynamic that occurred in the early 1990s is the gang that operated in the Gulfton area was referred to as the Dark Angels. And from the Dark Angels in the early 1990s, you had a split in the gang itself. And that's how the Southwest Cholos came about. And they controlled the Gulfton area, and La Primera that came about, which controlled 9000 Beach Nut. And La Primera was a gang that basically was influenced to form under that name due to the movie that came out called American Me. In the mid 1990s, from La Primera, you had SPPL break out and break away from LP. And they primarily operated in the Prestwood, Fondren area, the Sharpstown neighborhood. What was interesting about that is what used to be one united group, you now had 3 different groups. And today, as we all know, they're all fighting amongst each other in the West Side area of town, as well as the Midwest area of town and South Gessner's area of responsibility. Around that same time period, you also had MS-13. Sorry about that. You also had MS-13, which is an international gang, began to show up in the Houston area in the early 1990s. Today, MS-13 is our biggest threat. And the reason why I say that is because MS-13 is composed of numerous different cliques that fly under the same umbrella. Most of those individuals under MS-13 are coming in from El Salvador and Honduras. And what we see happening right now is that the Honduras faction of MS-13 is breaking away from the El Salvadorian faction. And we anticipate, because of that, a power struggle to begin here in the Houston area. And one thing that's very important to understand about that is not only are they coming up from El Salvador and Honduras right now, We also have MS-13 gang members coming from all over the country into the Houston area, all for the purpose of strengthening their cliques and organizations here in the Houston area. What's interesting about the local gangs, which are also transnational gangs, is that the blue rag for the Crips and the red rag for the Bloods don't really matter anymore. We often see Crips and Bloods forming under a different gang umbrella, which is territorial, for instance. We had that happen in early 2020 and late 2019 under the Hayes Street Mafia. We had Bloods and Crips and gangster disciples and black disciples all coming under the Hayes Street Mafia umbrella, all for one color, and that's green, all for making money. And that was pretty interesting, but at the same time, it also had a lot of mistrust within that organization that led to many of the homicides that occurred in Westside's area in January of 2020, all for retaliation purposes and mistrust amongst the members due to a murder that occurred in November of 2019. What we see many of these gangs doing today, we see them involved in narcotics, aggravated robberies, carjackings, extortion, human trafficking, mail theft, and financial fraud, which is a huge transition for these gangs because it's an easy way for them to make money. But what we also see among many of these gangs is that practically each and every one of them that we have under investigation right now in the Houston area is connected to a Mexican cartel. And that provides another element of danger that we as citizens have to be aware of and on the lookout for. The two primary cartels that operate in the Houston area are the Gulf Cartel and the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, which is the one that we are most concerned about right now because they are very young. They have recently broken away from another cartel and they have a high propensity for violence. But the key to combating these gangs is collaboration with our local, state, and federal partners, and by sharing intelligence with our crime suppression teams out in the field at the various patrol commands. And that's my primary goal, is to share that intelligence so that we can get in front of the problems that we are starting to see occur within the gang culture here in Houston. And our goal through the sharing of that intelligence is primarily to dismantle the gangs as a group. We try not to go after the individuals. We try to go after the group so we get them in the aggregate as opposed to one and done arrests, which we're not having a whole lot of success with. But we are having success with the group approach because our federal partners are very much involved with providing the funding and a lot of the technology that we need to take them down. And that's pretty much it. I'm trying to stay short and sweet, David.
Anybody have any questions about gangs out here? Hey, Commander, do you think the murder increase in Houston is due to the gang violence?
It plays a role. It definitely plays a role.
Is it all violent crime?
Is all violent crime associated with gangs? Back in 2017, all the crime suppression teams got together, and essentially what it boiled down to is we, as a group, pretty much agreed that 80% of the crime in Houston, especially the violent crime, is associated with gangs in some way, shape, or form.